second timer. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the August 21st, 2015 Intuit Developer Friday morning Hangout. I'm your host, David Leary. I'm a developer evangelist for the Intuit Developer group. So that was going to cover things like the QuickBooks API. We have a payments API. We have customer account data API, which is kind of basically your bank feeds. And today's topic actually is on bank feeds. Ben Gulmet from the CAD team is joining us this morning. So please, if you have any questions, you can use the join URL and join the Hangout. If you're viewing it in the YouTube video, or if you're viewing it in the YouTube experience, I will pop open the Q&A panel, and you can ask questions via the Q&A panel. There. With that said, I'm going to switch on to my camera and unmute Ben and let him jump in. Give me a second. Okay, hello everybody, and Ben, you're on. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I am Ben Gummelt. I've been in charge or been managing the CAD APIs for about 3 years now, and my main role is helping developers be successful with the API, as well as learning the intricacies of this API and be able to utilize all the little specialties that make it difficult to use sometimes, but at the same time very powerful for your application. So just to basically gloss over what the topic is, everyone's probably heard of Mint.com. If you haven't, you probably should. It's a really great app that we offer here at Intuit, and the primary feature of this is to kind of expose your financial life to you in one place. And so the power of this API is that you can actually add all of your banks that you own and be able to see your financial life in a holistic manner. This is really great for many reasons. Today, a lot of people kind of spend money left and right with their debit cards, and they don't really know what's going on. And we do have some developers that have kind of used our API to help fix that problem, because right now it's way too easy to spend money and it's way too easy to get in debt. So one thing, we have a developer called Level Money, really solid developer that basically shows you what your balance is throughout the day, so you can know, can I buy this cup of coffee today? Can I go buy this this new car in the next coming weeks or so? So it's a really great API, and I'll just show you kind of a little bit into what it's about. So let me just share my screen.
And Ben, we're flipping over, just to clarify, so this QuickBooks Online has the bank feeds API, which I think a lot of the Intuit developers are familiar with. So
Yes.
that's the bank feeds API. Mint uses the bank feeds API, and then there's the CAD API, and then TurboTax does also, right? So all three of our products are all using this under the covers for some purpose or another.
Yeah, that's correct. So we do utilize it throughout the business, and the CAD API is basically us exposing that technology that all of our offerings currently utilize today. So it's a really powerful system, and one of the key features of it is our categorization engine. We actually pull in what our knowledge was from all of those different products, what we've seen customers actually input into the system and modify, and we're sending that knowledge back out to you, so that when you send a transaction through, it'll come back with the knowledge of, you know, QuickBooks Online, with the knowledge of Mint.com, with the knowledge of TurboTax, all those types of things that we've learned from users actually correcting our categorization engine. All that knowledge is getting funneled back into your transactions, so it becomes a lot more relevant, a lot more valuable to you as well.
Okay, so it sounds like there's kind of two things there. You can download transactions, but then you can also pass a parameter if you want or something, and then get categories too on your transactions.
Yeah, it's another feature you can enable for categorization. So we send you the transactional data, and it could be jumbled up. You'll have a lot of text in there that will say, you know, the name of the merchant plus the address plus a bunch of other information. It's all in a really long string that's really hard to kind of program around. So what our system does, it actually cleans that up and makes it really nice and easy to read, easy to program against, and it also gives you categories that if you go to Mint, you can see the categories that we typically will respond back saying, like automobile, or this was an auto expense, or this was rent, or this was a paycheck, things like that.
Got it. So just to make sure I kind of heard you correctly, so it's not just a categorization service. We're basically cleaning up and massaging that feed so it's easier and quicker for you to work with as a developer.
Yeah, that's correct. So that's an additional charge for that. So just to go over the general pricing of it, it's $1,000 per month minimum and 30 cents additional per user. So it's not additional of the 1,000. It's once you reach that maximum of 3,333 users, then you'll start paying over that $1,000 minimum. The categorization part of it is an additional 5 cents per user.
Got it. And I'm going to showcase the actual pricing page.
Okay.
So that way, what Ben, if you didn't catch what Ben wrote down exactly, it'll be shared in the showcase. So I'm sharing that right now over to the left. So that should be shared out there. Yeah, so Ben, go ahead. If you want to demo anything or show it a little deeper, that would be great.
Okay, let me just share my screen. Does it show, is it showing, or is it just showing my Hangout?
You're showing the your Firefox or your Google Chrome browser just fine.
Oh, so you did see the developer page?
Yes, yes, you were yes.
Okay,
shared
sorry.
properly.
Okay, so this is our main landing page for developer.intuit.com. If you haven't been here yet, you should definitely dive in. We have a lot of great features. But if you want to check out CAD specifically, we're down here under customer account data, or customer data API. So this basically is the main landing page. We have the API reference page that will show you more into what happens and which endpoints that you need to go to actually utilize our service. We have about...
Ben, could you do a Control Plus just to drill that, zoom in a little bit? It's a tad small.
Better?
That's better. Yeah, that's better.
So the Get Institution API is the first one that you're going to want to go into, and we support around 24,000 institutions between the US and Canada. So this is a very important API to call. This is how you get the entire list. And just to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like, we'll show you in the... You'll get just the list of all the institutions, as well as their home URL, their phone number, and if they're virtual. And virtual means if they're a test script or if we actually have a connection with them. So right now it just shows a bunch of test data, but when you do add it, you'll get like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all the main people will show up in there.
Can you, Ben, can you clarify what you mean by that? By like we have a script versus a direct connection to that bank? What that means?
Well, what I was saying with the virtual is we create new scripts when we get a request, and the script will be there, but it won't actually connect. We actually have to write it and build it. So there are some institutions that we've had requests to add, and we're basically waiting to get the credentials to go in there and actually create a script. So we have a mechanism that will capture the credentials, be able to create a script without knowing the credentials, and then write out and develop the script, all while keeping the user's information secure. So the one thing that David was kind of mentioning about direct and non-direct, so around 80% of our scripts are screen scraping. That basically means we log into the website. We have a bot that basically clicks and goes around the page, pulls in the relevant data that we need, and downloads it from the website. So it's very rudimentary, but it's very effective. We do have around 15% are OFX, which is basically a standard on how to download data. We use a protocol to go to a back-end server so we don't go to the front end, and then we download the bank data directly from like an API feed in a sense. And when we download it that manner, you usually have to use a different username and password. So the user experience is a little different and sometimes difficult to relay to the user. But some institutions have had a lot of success with that. Example would be ShareBuilder and Capital One 360. That website has, you have to go into the settings page and you have to sign up to get an external PIN, and then you can use our service to download your transactional data. So in those senses, it's a little different, but for the most part, we just use your regular username and password that you'd find to go into any of your bank websites.
Got it.
Okay, so next one's the institution details. So when you're doing the API itself, you have to get the keys for it. And so what we call the keys are like your username and your password. So when you're logging into your website, you'll go to Bank of America and it'll tell you it's called an online ID and a password. So in our test bank, we have banking user ID and we have banking password. So when you're creating your user interface for your customer, you can just generate your form based on what we send back in this API. So you could create the name of it, so that would be your label. You could set your min and your max for the field. You can say if it's display flag true, that means you do want to show it. We do sometimes send keys that are not to be shown, so you want to make sure the display flag is set to true. And then the display order is going to be how you send it. So this one's user ID and password. One other thing too to note is that we have the mask under here, which will tell you if you need to mask it. If it's a password field, you definitely want to mask it. You don't want to be showing that in plain text. So this is a really great thing to do, and if you want to kind of integrate a help box, you can put a little question mark after it, and there's this instructions part that you can kind of post in there as well. So it's very valuable to a user to have as much metadata about what they're doing. And so this is specifically why this API is very important for your application.
Got it.
And those keys that we were just talking about, they are what you need to actually create Discover an Ad. So Discover an Ad is basically going out, it's going to the summary page of the website that you're trying to add, and it's grabbing all the accounts that belong there. So what you need to use is you need to provide your username and password, and then if there is multi-factor authentication, which we call MFA, you will get back, which that one's not working right now, so you will get back usually it's a challenge question, sometimes it's an image, but when you get back the challenge question, you'll have to resubmit this API call to get that information. So it's very it's a little bit different. You'll get like a 401 HTTP error, and then you'll have to respond back with the challenge question and answer. All the documentation's here, but if you do need to get more insight into it, we can definitely arrange some time to talk if you do need more details about it. Just contact developer support through this website. You just go down to the very bottom of the page and go to contact us, and you can do either a forum one, which is basically same as Stack Overflow in that regard, and we typically will respond back to that same day, if not within the next day, or you can do a support ticket as well. Both are great ways of getting in touch with me, and we can definitely work together to go through these type of scenarios. So this basically will go and grab those accounts, and then you'll get a response back with you'll have some of the data that just comes back. So you'll have the different accounts, the account number, the account ID. I'm trying to look for an example for you, but yeah, here we go. So you'll get the account ID, what status it is, the account number, which I believe is truncated to the last four, the nickname of the account, what position it was on the website, the balance, all those types of information. So if you're trying to make an app that really pulls a lot of this metadata, this is definitely a really important response that you want to get. So basically the API will go and discover and add the accounts. They'll be in the system, and then the next step most developers will do will go and get the transactions. So transactions are kind of the meat and potatoes of the API. I mean, you're getting all the specific transactions that user did, and that's kind of the lifeblood of many of the apps that we use or that use our system today. They use that to create a running balance, so they'll reverse everything using the account balance to actually generate what was our balance, 3 months ago, for example. They'll use this API to just track your expenses. They'll see, okay, well, he went to fast food for 3 times, so that will be, $40 off that budget. So there's very many reasons to use this, but we can show you what a typical transaction looks without categorization. So you can see the pay name, credit card, credit 295. So sometimes it's really difficult to kind of decipher that.
This is without. This is what a response looks like if you don't get the categorization service.
Yeah. So if you don't use categorization, this is what you would see. And then
so I just get like put it 295, and I really don't know if that was McDonald's or
yeah,
Starbucks or anything.
like sometimes it'll say, like if you look at this example, it says credit card. It would probably say like McDonald's, whatever the address you came from, the date, and then there's a bunch of other numbers that are, usually the institution understands it, but we don't really understand it. So that's typically what you'd get back. But then, you see one of these things with categorization enabled, and here's a good example. So the pay name says Target Costco Loan Credit Card 147. So the normalized pay name would be Target Costco Loan. We also go in deeper that tells you with the context of that. So we'll say category name is a loan and it's a business loan. So that will kind of give you an easier way to drill down into a transaction and really understand what it is.
So we're not just on the categorization. We're just when we massage it, obviously, give you the name, the page, etc. And categories. If I'm listening here correctly, we're actually giving the tax line assignment to the Schedule C.
Yeah, we try to give the Schedule C on every transaction. So.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a really, really great feature, and I feel it's one of our defining points. If you're kind of shopping around at different vendors, our categorization is one of the best. That was definitely one comment I've received a lot of feedback about. So these other APIs at a high level, they'll return all your accounts that you discovered. So you can do it in different methods, specifically with the account ID if you want to just pull up one account with a login. So a login is like if I have a Bank of America and I have a Chase account, my credentials that I use for Bank of America, that's considered a login. So if you, on the Discover and Add, I can kind of show you response. So in the response, you can see all these different fields for the account. Institution login ID. So this field right here is what we call the institution ID, or the login ID. So you would have to use that for, there's about 3 APIs that you use that for. You use that for the update institution login. So if your customer has a bad login, they fail to log in, then you use update institution login with that ID I just showed you. Also, if they get an MFA prompt, we sometimes have institutions that will provide 3 multi-factor authentication.
And those are like those questions like, what was your dog's name?
Yeah.
Favorite teacher in first grade? Okay, got it.
That's correct. Yeah. So there might be 3 institutions or 3 questions that will be prompted to you. When we log in, we only get prompted with 1 typically. So on the next login that we go in there to refresh your account, we may encounter another question. So if that's the case, then we throw an error message of 185 on the account, and that basically is letting you know, hey, we tried to go and aggregate your account, but we came upon an error code. So in those instances, it's not always going to stay in that status because we do refresh every night. We start a refresh at about 10 p.m. And when we're refreshing the account, we'll try it again with a 185. So if we do go in and we get a question we do know, we'll just aggregate like before. There won't be any issues, and then you basically will just have an updated account. But if there is an instance where you're just continuously getting a question, you need to get it answered, then the update institution login will be able to provide you that question so that you can answer it and move on with the system updating your account. The other API that uses that login ID is the get login accounts right here. So you can see right here login ID is shown there, and then the rest of them are all basically off the account ID. So update account type is another example of, it's an API you're not going to use much of, but when we go and pull accounts, the first discover and add, you may get accounts back that will say that they're in type other. They won't say that they're like a banking account per se. We actually have to refresh. We have to pull in transactional data and dive deeper into those accounts to really know what type of account they are. So there's 4 APIs that can do that: get account transactions, get account, get customer accounts, and get login accounts. I recommend using get login accounts because it's a very quick API to use, because you're just pulling in the accounts you just added. And that's really what you're trying to get a hold of. You don't want to do get customer accounts, just because if you have 20 or 30 accounts in the system, that's going to take a lot longer for that to refresh all those accounts, and so you're really kind of making your customer wait in that sense. So I recommend doing discover and add, get login accounts. That will refresh all those accounts, pull in transactions at the same time, and then you can call get account transactions once you get a successful aggregation response.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's little things like that are what you kind of have to look out for, and a great way to kind of build your system is by using the testing calls to the API. So this page right here is using our test bank, CC Bank, which is 100,000. You can use this to actually leverage a bunch of different test scenarios, such as a successful login, so you successfully add accounts. Bad accounts, so here's where you can do a bad login to simulate a 103 error. You can do bad MFA response, which will simulate a 187 error. And all those error messages are actually on this response code page, so if you want to have more insight into what I'm talking about, because I'm sure it's not the clearest. I've worked with it too much, so I kind of skip over the little things. But we do explain all the different error messages in here. So this section right here, these are error messages that occur when you do aggregation. So you're adding an account, there's some type of issue, we'll respond with these error codes. And there's a field, which I can go back to, under, actually, keep going back to this one. I might as well just keep it open. There's a field right here called aggregation status code. When that's 0, that means it's a successful response. But this is where you would see the 103, the 185, the 187. All those various error messages will show up there. So this is going to load. So all these messages right here will show. So this is really kind of where you have to do a lot of testing and really play with the system. And a lot of them can't be replicated with testing calls right here. So I recommend, actually, we do allow you to add real accounts, but we do limit you. So there's 20 customers to your application, and with each customer they can own 10 accounts in the system. And that's just for the development. When we go to production, we don't limit your customers, but we do still limit your accounts to, I believe, 200 accounts per customer. And that's just to protect you, because most people don't have over 200 accounts. And so we put that in place basically to prevent you from adding a lot of accounts to one user and really reduce the performance.
Okay. So just kind of following the timeline here, the kind of development cycle. So a developer can jump in, they can connect to that account that we've created.
Mm-hmm.
They can make calls. They can see the responses. If they get error messages, look up the codes for those errors. And then if they're ready to take that next level, they can actually connect 10 real live customers. Or did you say 20?
They can do 20, but they can only have 10
customers.
accounts each. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So that could be a good way to get a deep, if you're trying to do a beta test or something like that, you should be able to get a deep swab across the population in a way of different types of accounts, different things.
Yeah. I mean, if you can limit the number of accounts they try to add and keep the experience, fairly minimal, just to kind of prove your MVP, it's definitely a great way to kind of do a mini beta. If you do have like a business use case where you do want a few more test users, you can reach out to support, and we can look into the possibility of expanding that for you. But we tend to not, just because it is difficult if you do lose your list of customers to get you back that entire list of customers. And when you expand it beyond that 20 customer limit, it becomes a really big problem for us, just because I have to manually look everything up, and you may get a lot of delays because of that. So that's just kind of a brief overview of that. We do have this system called API Explorer, which is actually
we had a sandbox or something like that. That's great.
Yeah, this is where you can do a sandbox with your real live app. So it's going to be using your customers. It's going to be using your information. I don't have, on the computer I'm on right now, I don't have the specifics on it, but you can do all the get institution details. You can do a discover and add when you do a create here. A little nuance that you need to know is it says XML here, but our sample code is in JSON. So if you do get default body, it'll actually populate what the JSON body looks like here. And then you can try that. And it basically will add 10 accounts, because CC Bank automatically always adds 10 accounts. So you may come upon an error if you try to discover and add twice, that it will go, you've reached your limit. That is basically because we do have that 10 account limit, and if you try to add anything beyond that 10 accounts, it will fail. So if I had five accounts in my system, and I tried to add an account, or try to add an institution or a login with six accounts on it, it will fail, because it won't add up until the limit. It will just add the whole thing at once, and if it can't, then it will fail.
Gotcha.
So that's a good thing to kind of be aware of. And if that is the case, the simplest thing to do is just go down to delete customer and just delete them all, or delete yourself. So every API call is actually done by the user. So when you provide, we use a SAML assertion, which is kind of a very difficult way, I would find, to do it, but it's very secure. So that's the reason why we chose that as our method of connecting. But when you basically just create your app here with us, you upload an X509 certificate, which we actually will go into more details on how to do. We have a page on how to create an X509 certificate, and what this certificate is you basically are signing your request to us, and within the request itself, you're sending, it's an OAuth. You're basically signing an OAuth as that user, so you're accepting the OAuth flow for them by using the X509 certificate. You're sending all their details over, saying, I'm user number 1, for example. I'm accepting that this user is valid and that this user can use my system. And then at that point, we'll provide you back keys, and you can just use a system just like you would with a standard OAuth connection. We do have libraries to help you get that part through, because it is really difficult to go through. .NET, Java, we had some third-party developers also create a Ruby library, PHP library, and I also have a Node library, which I will be putting up there shortly. We just have to review it and make sure everything's good. But it's a very good. What were you just...
I was just saying, it's great. You're catching some. I've been making some notes and questions on the side, and I think you're kind of catching these. It's for a sandbox for an API Explorer. You caught that. Do we have any wrappers, right? or packages, and it looks like we have a lot of that. I think something along the lines of packages. Do we offer like any UI widgets, etc.? Because I feel like sometimes I go to if I see an implementation of bank feeds in a product, they have like it starts out with that box where you start to type your bank name, and then after like I start to type American Express, and it kind of filters up the 2 or 3 American Express accounts I could possibly add. Is that something that it feels like that UI smells and tastes the same across the board? Is it a widget that's being provided, or is that just people are copying best practices from each other?
A lot of it's just best practices. We don't have a widget today. It's definitely something that we've put in our backlog because it is. I feel it's important to get you through the process easily. We have a lot of knowledge internally with Mint and QuickBooks and how they manage that relationship with the institution list. And if you go to Mint, I feel it's one of the best experiences for it because you can type any URL in there, or you can type in the name of the institution, or maybe if you use B of A instead of saying Bank of America, it will show up the correct list below. And so I definitely, it's something that we kind of have in the roadmap, but it's not something that's mapped out yet, but it's something that we do have in our backlog to do one day. But I do agree it would be a really great asset to have for developers because I feel that part of it itself is most of your development is that finding the institution flow and then actually producing the login page to have them log through.
Yeah, because the API calls seem pretty straightforward for everything else. It's just that there's definitely work and logic and understanding, and to have every developer to do that over and over again, seems a little on the crazy side because everybody has to do it the same. Everybody's probably have the same identical workflow, which is like type your bank account, we're going to go find it, and then handle the next step from there. Interesting. Offhand, just kind of related to finding bank accounts, how many accounts are we supporting now? The bank feeds support through the CAD API.
How many accounts do we have today, you mean?
Yeah, like banks and financial institutions. Where are we at now?
I believe it's 24,000 like bank and credit unions across the board. I don't have that number in front of me, but I know if you call this Get Institutions API, you'll get a pretty significant list.
Okay, because I think last I heard it was like 19,000, so it looks like it's heading towards 25. That's amazing.
Yeah, internally we made an app here that'll produce the list. So I'll pull that up in a second. We can kind of take a look at it. So yeah, there's different types of data on the left-hand side. One of them is batch data. We have APIs for batch data, and I can go into more detail on that if you want me to, David.
Yeah, before we jump in on that, I just want to make sure I leave kind of a pause here for anybody that's watching kind of in the YouTube experience. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If you want to ask a question, I can repeat it to Ben and get that answered for you. If you don't have any questions through there, if you're currently joined, you can ask a question on here. I know currently right now Matt's in here. Matt, I don't know if you've looked at customer account data API before. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. If not, I'll let Ben jump back and continuing away with the batch transactions.
Okay, so with the batch data, so every night we run a batch job around 10 p.m. and that's basically updating all of your accounts. So it'll go through each and every one of your users, go to the financial institution and pull in any new data, and then download it into our system. So while it's doing that, we actually we call this batch data. Every 15 minutes we generate a batch file that contains all the new data that we just learned or got into our system. So this will also include the job that runs at night that actually updates all the accounts. So you will start getting a lot of really full files at nighttime when it's doing that update. So every 15 minutes we'll generate this file. Well, actually, in the file there's 3 subfiles. One of them is the accounts. one of them's the transaction file, and the last is investments. So any updates to the accounts, maybe they have a new balance, maybe they have, new maturity date, different things like that will all show up in that file. The transaction file will have, of course, your transactions, and investments will have your positions and your investment-related data. So these get generated every 15 minutes, and so we have an API that you can call that it'll list out your files that we have in our system, and then you can go ahead and just download them. It's fairly straightforward. I mean, you'll get the transaction name and the name of it, and it'll be .gzip, and all you have to do is just rename it after you unzip it, and then you can just download the data itself. And it's I believe it's spaced out. The file itself is space delimited, and so you have to just parse that, and we have more details on that within the documentation page itself. I believe the parameters are all here, so you can kind of see the max length of how far this would go, how much you have to cut off to grab that data, and so forth.
And so this one file that's generated automatically that has all my customer transactions.
Yeah. So this contains everybody. So as I said before, all the API calls are done from the perspective of the end user. So if this call is more of an administrative call, so you would we give you an ID. So when you go inside of your app itself, I can show you real quick.
While you're signing in, just kind of thinking out loud on this. So as a developer, if I'm getting this every 15 minutes, I probably don't need to request data.
Yeah, we've kind of found through trial and error that refreshing the accounts over and over is really not the most efficient way to keep your site up to date. It's really great to kind of just basically go in and refresh it when the user's in the system itself, or refresh it when the user when they actually need that data. Like if maybe you have a use case of, well, every day the user logs into my mobile app at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. Well, maybe you can automatically do a refresh for them in that sense, at least so that the mobile app will be up to date.
Okay.
But if you over refresh, like one of our developers was doing it every 4 hours, and they found that when you do it that often, a lot of cases you'll lock the user out because it will keep trying to do MFA. In some institutions, if you get prompted for a multi-factor and you don't answer it, it acts as a bad login for the user. So in that experience, it's very bad because you don't want to be locking your users out. You want to keep them coming back. So that's one kind of insight into it. Another one is most institutions don't update their site real time. I mean, there's some, the richer, the more, like the Bank of Americas of the world, they'll have that data on demand, but there's some credit unions and stuff like that batch all of their transactions at night anyway. So there's really no use in updating it as frequently as that.
Got it.
So here's an example of an app I made.
Through our experience, really the best practice.
Yeah, the best practice I would say, I mean, the way that Mint works too, they rely entirely on the batch file, and then if a user logs into the system, they'll refresh your account manually. So that's how they use the system, and it's worked great for them. I don't think there's a need for much more than that, but some users do want to have that data ready when they go into like the mobile experience, and I don't blame them, but at the same time, it's not really worth over refreshing because it does put a strain on our relationship with the financial institutions, as well as a strain on just our systems in general. So it's just out of what we've learned from it, it's definitely better to just use the system, update it, but if you do need to do more frequent updates, maybe for the user logging in or things like that, our real-time APIs are definitely there for that service.
Got it. So just I have 1,000 customers. I'm going to get you information from all 1,000 of those on a regular basis, and it should be good enough for most of my customers, but maybe a very small percentage, they log in, and at that time, I can just refresh, give
Yeah.
them real-time data. But I don't
Yeah.
have to, I don't have to, if I only have 10 people logging in every hour, I don't have to refresh all 1,000 every single 15, 10, 5 minutes. I can just refresh
Yeah.
just the users that would find it. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's correct. So here's basically an app after I've created it. It's a fairly simple process. You can just go to, once you register, you go to My Apps, and there's a little button on the top right, which I can show you right here. And you do Create App, and you do the Select the API. So if you're interested in QuickBooks, you would click here for QuickBooks. Payments is right here, and customer account data is just down here. So you just do Create CAD App. Here's where that X509 certificate came in. The name of the application, this is something that we use throughout your life cycle of your app. So if it's something that you're going into production for, I highly recommend you put the name of your company there and the name of the app. Just because we really like to have it as clear as possible, and having Intuit Test API is very difficult to find your app when it's named that. So I definitely recommend make this a valuable name, make it very clear and what you actually are going to finally call the app, because it will live with you forever, and it's best to have that kind of clear to us as well as you. We ask if your app will store credentials. So some people feel that they need to store the user's credentials on their actual application. We highly recommend against doing that. We have a reasons why not page, so definitely recommend checking that out. Let's just say no for this demo. And then if you do the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, this is if you're doing loan determinations or you're trying to determine someone's credit. This is a very popular feature, or very popular industry right now. A lot of small-time lenders kind of using our APIs to figure out if someone can get more money or not. We have the option for batch data. I recommend doing it. Batch data is great. That's what I was talking about with automatic. Every 15 minutes we generate a file for you. This is a really great tool to use, so I recommend saying yes on that. And then categorization's that additional 5 cents, and you do yes, and then you just continue. Of course, you have to upload a certificate X509. Once you create an app, you're going to be in here. As you can see, I have a very nondescript app name, so I'm a hypocrite in what I just said, but this helps me at least do some testing. Within the system itself, it'll give you some documentation here that you can get to, as well as your OAuth key and OAuth secret, so those are very important. And then your SAML identity provider ID. So those three fields you'll basically plug into our SDKs, and then you should be able to just go off the road and start working on it without an issue. And then batch authentication ID. This is the in the SAML assertion. This is what you put in the name ID field. So, like as I was saying before, you could have your users numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. For batch, when you use our batch APIs, you have to use this ID or else it will fail. So that's just an idea of why we have specific restrictions on the APIs on who can access them. So this protects it from having any other kind of user in the system access it, but it also gives you control on not paying for the batch user if we come down to the granularity of paying per user. And then right here, the X509 certificate. So certificates expire. That's just a way of life. We show the expiration here. You can add an additional certificate, which is what you need to do. We don't allow you to replace the one that's being used at that time, so you need to add a new one to get it to work. And this is really great to kind of manage your systems when you're trying to migrate if you want to move to a new certificate. And then going to production. So the next step is basically going through, we have a security review. We go through all of the UI of your application, make sure there's no vulnerabilities to people spamming your website trying to get in, guessing people's passwords, different types of techniques to gain access to their user data. So we try to protect you and the customers against any of that. So we perform a test with our vendor Cigital, and we work to kind of make sure everything is clean and secure before we let you go into production. I think that's pretty much everything high level. Any questions or things you want me to go over?
Still nothing came in at all through the Q&A panel. I'm just sliding that out here to make sure there's no questions. Nothing to the Q&A panel. I'm not sure if I know Matt does a lot of QuickBooks Online API development, and I'm not sure he's touched bank feeds at all, or if he even just on the side has interesting experience or questions about them. But Matt, feel free to unmute if you do. I do have another question though. What's kind of on the horizon, like with kind of bank feeds and where this is headed? Because obviously, what kind of I see what you're doing now is kind of what Mint's like about 6, 7 years old now. Like this whole concept of just getting the bank account data and categorizing it is kind of one level of a service, right? And that's kind of where we are today. Like where do you see things headed? You know, what's coming down the pipe?
So coming down the pipeline now, we actually have a new set of APIs, and we're calling them the account verification or identity. I believe it's called Intuit Identity API. And with that API, it will go and you can use your username and password, and it will tell you the name of the owner on the account, their bank and routing number, and the account number. And so that will be a really great feature for those developers that are trying to figure out if this person is who they say they are. It's going to be like when you're doing like ACHs out, it's a really great thing to have in place. And we find that that will probably meld really well with our payments API, QuickBooks API. All these APIs kind of play off each other. And if you are just using QuickBooks, customer account data is another great step in the direction of giving your customer a holistic view of what they have in the system. I know there's different types of uses of the QuickBooks API beyond just transactional and you know what's in your ledger and whatnot, but this API can basically empower you to get those transactional data out of QuickBooks and use that for a different purpose or give your user kind of a more holistic view. We do have a few developers that are kind of crossing the bridge. They work with small businesses to go through their credit cards, make sure that their users are, paying off like what they spent for that month, be able to write that off and be able to reconcile what's happening with their transactions, and so they can go pull the data feed and know what transactions employee A did, and then they would be able to tie that into their QuickBooks system as well. So it's a very interesting way of kind of managing it, but it definitely helps make everything easier, especially when you're trying to do expense tracking.
Got it. And then only other one kind of was wondering, are there any like limits on the amount of API calls or limits on what you're allowed to do with this data? But can you aggregate this data and kind of summarize it across the board, across a bunch of users, or
Yeah, so we do have some throttling that we put in place for the API calls. So 2,500 calls within a minute per developer. So we do kind of limit the number of calls. You can't just send a ton of calls to us. But this is, it's not really a limit other than that. I mean, you can still refresh accounts and all that kind of information. But if you're trying to automate it and trying to run through a lot of users all at one time, you definitely have to make sure you fall under this line, or else we'll start throttling all your API calls, and that's not the most enjoyable experience. We also believe with our financial institutions, you can't refresh an account more than 1 hour. So if you have a user in your system and they keep hitting the refresh button to refresh it, you're just going to get the same data back. It's not going to give you anything new. So you might as well discourage that behavior or create a blocker in place that lets them know that their accounts are as up to date as it can be. We kind of go into all the details about security, how we manage the information. If you want to get into a custom agreement with us, which we'll have a little more details, we'll actually handhold more. We'll work with you a lot more to get you across the finish line. That's around $25,000 if you wanted to do that. The regular pricing is right here, 30 cents a user, 5 cents if you want categorization, $1,000 per month. And we bill you on a monthly basis. So if you have activity in August, we'll bill you in September for August. So you'll probably see a bill in the middle of the next month. So that's just to give you an idea of how we do the billing for you. But all the documentation should be here.
So that 5 cents, just to make sure I'm understanding or seeing this correctly. So that 5 cents is for all the categorization I need for that one user for the entire month. It's not like per category or per
that's correct.
download or anything like that. Okay, got it.
Yeah, we basically enable categorization for your entire app, and at that point, then it's 5 cents a user per month. So we don't do it per transaction because that would get expensive really quickly.
Got it. Okay, so basically, if I want to support one of my customers to pull on their data, I'm looking at 35 cents a month per customer.
Yes, that's correct. Just to
get the full boat. Okay, got it. This is great. It was very, very helpful. There's no other questions that came in at all, Ben.
Okay.
I do would love to have you come on back on again. I know Emily, I've talked to Emily about this to talk about some of the newer things when you guys release those new APIs, maybe in 4 weeks or 8 weeks, whenever those come out.
Yeah.
I don't know what iteration you're on. It'd be great to bring you guys on and kind of show those a little bit and kind of get that word out there. Because I think, like, you're right, it's starting to be a lot of overlap, right? So as a QuickBooks developer, I could use these other APIs to accent my QuickBooks integration. And the same is true the other way. I think there are some people that have done something with customer account data because, and then they're like, oh, there's an opportunity for me to integrate with QuickBooks also here. So there's definitely an overlap of these APIs and educating, customer account data developers and the QuickBooks developers of these overlaps and how they get these APIs accent each other is definitely important. The rest of you, there are a few more topics. I haven't nailed down the dates, but for the next couple of Hangouts, we should have the developer team. We're launching a developer hub, and that hub should actually have some space. It'll be the place for like our social stuff, videos, our calendars, information like that. That doesn't fall under really technical issues. But it's things people have asked for a long time. Every time, like, I can't find a Hangout, I can't find this, or I didn't know you guys were doing this, and I missed that. It wasn't on my calendar. So we're going to have a communications portal for all the non-support ticket type stuff, which we currently don't have right now. The blog post. People are always asking us, how do I keep track or stay on top of things? We're going to have one destination now. That'll be the catch-all for all of these communications that we do. It'll catch our Twitter, our Facebook. Everything will be in one umbrella, in one place. So we're going to have somebody come on to talk about that and demo that to everybody. We're also going to, the inventory improvements are starting to roll out in QuickBooks Online. I know Peter was on last week to talk about a little bit about that with the, at some level with how it's impact on developers. I'm working on having the product manager come in and talk about that also. Another thing we're going to have on is we're going to have a Hangout dedicated to the QuickBooks Connect hackathon soon. We'll also possibly do like a Turtle feedback session. So if you have an idea or an app you're thinking of building, I want to possibly have a Hangout where I have some accountants, like a panel of accountants as guests, and then you could pitch your idea, talk to the accountants about it, and they'll give you some feedback well before the QuickBooks Connect hackathon, so you can kind of steer your thought process and what features and functionality you want to get into your app before that actually comes around. I don't know if you have any closing comments at all. I'm just going to share something here on my side.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. If there's anything more that you do need, I'm always here. I'll be available via the forum or the support tickets. We can even schedule calls to kind of go over more in depth. So just let me know if there's anything I can help you with. And of course, good luck with our APIs, and I wish you success with your great innovative ideas.
Great, thanks, Ben. And did you want to give out your Twitter handle fast, in case anybody wants to follow you
Um,
on there?
yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I believe I'm real Ben Gummelt. That's my handle. So I think you can just find me with my name probably, uh,
Okay.
which is down there. But yeah, I don't tweet a lot, but I'll definitely respond to you if you tweet to me. So just keep me in your tweets.
Great. Thanks for coming, Ben. I do appreciate it. I'm going to
Yeah.
go ahead and shut down the broadcast. Thanks for everyone for hanging out, and we'll see you next week.
Bye. Thanks.
Have a good one.